the Ring camera that knew my name. I'm the guy friends call when their devices start acting like jealous lovers. I fix ghost notifications, tame smart locks, and talk executives out of letting their thermostats share data with their marketing teams. None of that prepared me for the night a doorbell camera did something only a person should do. It said my name like a secret. Her name was Vale. Not short for anything, just Vale, like a landscape that pretends it doesn't hold echoes. We met when her townhouse association hired me to audit their security mesh. Cameras, access panels, cloud retention, all the ways people volunteer to be watched. She was head of the board, which is to say she wore competence like a tailored coat and kept a pen in her hair, the way other people keep a knife in a boot. The system logs are a mess, she said during our first walkthrough, voice low, humor dry. Our vendor is good at invoices and bad at shame. Shame's not billable, I said. Neither is panic, she said. If you can keep us out of both, I'll owe you. A week later, I had the mesh humming and the logs sober. She insisted on buying me a drink in the neighborhood bar that believes lampshades make forgiveness easier. We talked risk premiums and city politics. She laughed at the exact places I hoped she would. When she reached to tuck a loose strand of hair behind her ear, her wrist brushed my sleeve and the air changed temperature. I didn't ask if she was single. I didn't say I was not. I just said, if you ever want a second set of eyes on the board's internal policies. I want exactly that, she said, eyes on my mouth for half a beat. Then, like it was nothing, come by Thursday. I'll make pasta you'll pretend to critique. The code she texted me for her door was a 4-digit sequence I recognized as a date, not mine. Inside, her place was all restrained light and muscular books. The pasta, anchovy and lemon, a mean little miracle, did not need my critique. Her record player spun something that made brass sound like embarrassment. We did not talk about partners any more than we talked about politics or childhood. We talked about how a city teaches you to narrate yourself out of trouble and how sometimes you still end up at someone's table with a body full of reasons to leave. We didn't leave. We weren't reckless, not exactly. We kissed the way people do when they know the camera in the living room can see the shape of bodies but not the detail. We kept our silhouettes clean and our hands messy. Her shirt landed on the back of a chair. My belt learned the geometry of her hip. We stayed on the right side of what I could explain to any god I still believed in. It was specific, not graphic. Her mouth finding my throat, my palm mapping the slope of her waist, the warmth that gathers where a shoulder meets a collarbone. When she arched under my hand and bit my lip, I forgot every password I'd ever memorized. After we lay on the rug like conspirators who'd gotten away with the right crime, she rolled onto her stomach, chin propped on forearms, and smiled into the floorboards. You looked terrified at first, she said. I was doing threat modeling, I said. And now, she asked. Now I'm doing gratitude, I said, and traced the line of her spine like a man taking attendance. I left late. The hallway smelled like polish and a neighbor's basil. At the door, the Ring camera flashed its blue halo. I nodded to it the way you nod at a doorman who knows too much. Then through the speaker, a voice, not mechanical, not cool, said, "Good night, Aaron." It was Vale's voice. It wasn't mine. It was the neutral, softly bright tone of the default assistant, but with my name where there had only ever been a generic goodbye. I froze with my hand on the latch. The app on my phone pinged, motion detected, one clip saved, no face tagged. I could tell myself 100 ways a system could be coaxed into saying a name. I could not explain why I felt seen in the way a diary does not see you, it keeps you. The next morning Vale texted, Brunch, strong coffee, your thoughts on firewalls and fate. Fate sounded like a dare. I brought coffee that tasted like an apology and a bouquet that smelled like decisions. She opened the door in a sweater that had declared peace with gravity. I glanced at the camera. It blinked and kept its secrets. While she whipped eggs in her tiny kitchen and told me about a board member who thought bylaws were a kind of weather, I checked the device logs. The audio snippet from last night wasn't there. Nothing was there except the new software build I had recommended 3 days earlier, and an integration she hadn't asked me about, a pilot feature that tied voice recognition to personalized departures. "Did you opt into this?" I asked, showing her the screen. "Into being told good night," she said, amused. "I prefer results to rituals." "Someone did," I said, "or someone wants us to believe someone did." She reached for her phone. "Damien set up the camera," she said, casual, practiced. "My husband. He likes gadgets more than he likes people who sell gadgets. He calls it due diligence." There it was, a proper noun thrown into a room like a smoke bomb. My body did that half-inch drop temptation does when it realizes it's not alone. I had known she was complicated. I hadn't assigned the complication such a clean syllable. "Is he around?" I asked. "Frequently," she said, "but not morally." "Lila." "We have an arrangement," she added. "It contains no legal language, only the words please and don't and home. Does that make you want to run?" "Not the part of me that makes good decisions," I said. She laughed, kissed me quick to change the subject, then kissed me again to ruin the attempt. We ate on the floor. We didn't talk about doorbells. Days at my office became a collage of repairs and small betrayals. The team at a nonprofit kept locking themselves out of their admin accounts because someone insisted on 11-character passwords that had to rhyme. A startup founder wanted invisible consent banners. A celebrity's assistant gave their dog its own email address and accidentally CC'd a tabloid. Every time I saved someone from themselves, I wondered who had integrated Veil's camera and why it had been taught to purr my name. I could have asked Damien. I didn't. Men like him mistake questions for invoices. The second time the camera spoke, it wasn't at Veil's. It was at my door. Hannah, my girlfriend of 3 years, had a habit of leaving voice notes rather than texts, as if intimacy needed a waveform. Our place had a different brand of doorbell, dumb on purpose. That night I came home later than I had promised and stood on the landing to steel my face into the man I preferred to be. I put my key in the lock and heard a chirp. High, bright, not ours. Then a soft, pleasant voice from my pocket. "Welcome home, Aaron." The Ring app was open, unbidden, a thumbnail of Veil's stoop glowing like a movie I hadn't picked. Someone had pushed a button a mile away, and my phone had decided to be loyal to the wrong door. I turned off the screen and went inside. Hannah was sitting on the floor among piles of paper. She was sorting our life into neat stacks, warranties, quotes for wedding venues we'd never call back, postcards from trips we described as restorative to justify their cost. She looked up and smiled the smile that had made me kinder. "You're late," she said. I kneeled, kissed her, and told the truth that fit. The city was a maze. "Did you solve it?" she asked. "I found a ladder," I said. She laughed and said she'd made lentils that didn't judge, and we ate them on the couch while a crime show pretended to be moral. I slept shallow. At 3 a.m. I woke to a noise, a faint ping on the dresser. My phone face lit the ceiling with a halo. I turned it over. The Ring app was glowing, a note across the top, voice print added. It listed my name and a name I didn't recognize, Leela. I stared long enough to remember it was the name of Veil's mother, stenciled on a photo in her hall. The camera was learning not just faces but genealogy. I went back to Vale the next day and told myself it was about security. She listened as I explained what I suspected. The vendor had rolled out a pilot feature to a few properties owned by their friendlies. Damien probably agreed. The camera was mapping voices and trying to be charming. It knew my name because Vale had spoken it near the door. It knew Leela because family tends to get said at thresholds. "So we turn it off," she said. "We can," I said. "Or we can train it to be polite to everyone. Better to barrage than to target." "That's a metaphor you didn't mean to say out loud," she said softly. She stood close enough that I could smell her skin, the warm citrus I had learned like a language. "And if we turned it off," she asked, "what would you miss?" I moved one hand to the small of her back and thought about the word nothing, how it can lie and rescue in the same breath. "Only the part where the door tells me I belong," I said. "And do you?" she asked. "Only in this moment," I said. We did what we do. It was slower than before and sharper, as if the room knew it had been told on. She took my wrist and set my palm on her ribs like a pledge. I learned how she shivered when my breath found the soft place below her ear. She pressed her thigh between mine, not forceful, certain. We stopped when stopping felt like a thing we were good at rather than a discipline we owed anyone. When we caught our breath, she said, "You're going to have to make a choice that hurts one person who isn't me." She said it kindly. I kissed her shoulder so I didn't have to answer. 2 nights later, the camera said my name again. This time while I was halfway up her stairs and Damien was halfway down. I hadn't known he was home. The calendar in Vale's kitchen had a dinner scribbled on it in his tight handwriting, and the place he wrote was one of those rooms where money talks in a whisper. He'd been early or lied. The angle where the stairs turn offers a slice of the entryway. He stood with his coat still on, and the look men wear when they're deciding whether to perform anger or profit from it. "Good night, Aaron," the ring said, cheerful, violating. Vale and I froze on the landing like dancers mid-step. Damien looked from the camera to me to the place where our hands were not touching and back again. Then he smiled, slow, a rehearsal of mercy. "The device," he said, not to me, "is overeager." "Then teach it patience," Vale said, voice a register lower than her usual. It was not a plea. It was a warning that sounded like silk. Damien's smile didn't break. He stepped aside, wide enough for the two of us to pass, and gestured toward the door with the kind of hospitality that sharpens cutlery. "I will," he said, "and I assume we will all be discreet about each other's calibration." It would have been so easy to be the man who smirked, the man who mistook himself for the protagonist. I nodded once, left without looking at the camera, and kept my face a neutral interface. On the sidewalk, air hit me like a verdict. I walked until the city's noise turned into weather. Then I called Hannah. I told her I was coming home early. I told her I wanted to talk. She made tea and sat cross-legged on the couch, that posture she uses when she intends to live through whatever comes next. I didn't tell her about pasta or sweaters or the place where Vale's breath hitches before she laughs. I told her there was someone, that I had been the worst version of careful, that nothing in a camera's memory could save me. I told her I loved her voice notes because they made the world small enough to manage. I told her I had to leave if she asked me to. She drew the throw blanket tighter around her shoulders and looked at me the way people look at lakes that have claimed swimmers. "Do you want to stay?" she asked. "Yes," I said, and it was cleaner than any story I could have told. "Then show me," she said, "not with perfect sentences, with ugly choices." I slept on the floor that night like penance. In the morning, I emailed the vendor with a 4-paragraph case study about how unconsented voice mapping could end marriages. I copied their compliance lead and my lawyer. I wrote Damien a 2-line note. One about the pilot feature being disabled across his portfolio. One about my invoice being discounted to buy myself the right to be righteous. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji, which is the punctuation billionaires use when they intend to remember your name. I texted Vale a set of words that fit in one bubble and broke 3 habits. I'm ending it here, I wrote. You deserve a story that's not narrated by machines. 3 dots appeared, then vanished, then returned. We were already a confession, she wrote. Write a future you can read in daylight. I didn't go back. Weeks slid into place the way routines do when they decide to be kind. Hannah and I started walking after dinner, not to talk about anything important, but because sidewalks have a way of showing you who keeps pace. I stopped fixing other people's midnight problems for a while and fixed our bookshelf instead. I retired the ring at our place and mounted a dumb brass knocker that sounds like a neighbor. The basil survived. There are days when my hands remember Vale's waist without asking my head. There are nights when the door feels too quiet. But then Hannah will pad into the kitchen in socks with constellations on them and lean against the counter, and I will stand between her knees, and our mouths will find each other with a slowness we can afford, and the city will be the noise it is supposed to be. It is not cinematic. It is specific. A thumb circling a wrist, a jaw softening because it wants to, a chest expanding because breath has decided to trust the room. Sometimes I pass Vale's block on my way to a client. The camera blinks, polite, uninterested. It does not say my name. Maybe it learned. Maybe someone taught it silence. Maybe that's the only miracle we're entitled to, the chance to be unrecorded long enough to become who we meant to be. I still fix systems that want to know more than they should. I still carry a phone that can interrupt me with other people's drama. But our door knows nothing except how to open and how to close. When I leave in the morning, Hannah is often still asleep, one hand open on the pillow like she's agreeing to something. I kiss her temple and whisper her name into a room that doesn't keep it. And when I come home, the hall smells like basil and soap, and the only voice that greets me belongs to someone who decided I could.